Hi, I'm Dr. Park, and today I'm going to talk about how we recognized our son Joseph's talent and helped him to get accepted at MIT. Now, first, I want to make it very clear I'm not here to talk about his gifts or certain schools, but just give you my personal story in a hope that it will help in some way raising your children. I never had to ask Joseph what kind of lifestyle he wanted to live because as long as I can remember, he always wanted to be like his father and become a surgeon. One of the benefits having Rachel doing so well at school was that her younger brother Joseph, was just kind of following her lead and was also doing very well at school. Now, one of the disadvantages was that we were so focused on Rachel and we just kind of thought that Joseph would follow her path, but it really took us a different mindset to recognize his talent so we could help him to set his future goal. I am more of a realistic person and I don't really believe in gifts or high IQ. I really believe that our potential continues to expand as we mature and work hard at it because that's how it was for me. In fact, when my kids were young, I told them I didn't want a super smart kids. I actually prefer kids who give their best on a daily basis. And I told them about my story. When I was young, I never considered myself as a smart kid. I thought I was more gifted in sports, especially baseball. And when I went to high school, I was having problems with my right shoulder, so I had to stop playing baseball. And because I had more time in my hand, I started focusing on school. And to my very surprise, I had straight A's. That's when I realized that there was no big difference between me and the top ranking students. Now, I still had to struggle and work really hard to maintain my grades, and I never made it to top ranking student. But at the end, I went academically further than any of my high school friends through hard work and maturing as a person. First time we recognized Joseph's talent in math was when he was in 5th grade. He came home one day from school and he said, we played a math game called Challenge 24 and he told us that he did it very well. So we encouraged him and we didn't think much of it. And about 2 weeks later, he came home with a box full of cards and the box, it says Challenge 24. And he asked me if I could help him. I said, sure. And he pulled out a deck of cards with face down and he asked me to flip it. So I flipped the card and he tapped. So I said, what does that mean? He said, I have the formula. And he wrote down the formula. And when he flipped the card, there was 4 numbers. And he had to use plus, minus, time, and division, all 4 of it to come up with the answer 24. So I was amazed. So I used the calculator and he was right. So I flipped another card and he tapped again, like within a few seconds, and he was right again. So that was very surprising to me. And about few weeks later again, he told me he's gonna represent his school at the regional competition. So he went on a competition and we went there and there were a lot of kids and it seems like they've been doing this for a very long time and there were a lot of kids who are actually better than Joseph. And he missed by a very small margin to become a state representative. So we're trying to encourage him. So we asked him, so when is the next competition? And he said, I'm not interested anymore. So we asked him, just because you failed once doesn't mean you stop. We asked him, what's the reason? And he said, he was a little disappointed. Well, he was really disappointed that many of the kids there are doing this for many, many years and they actually memorized everything. So they have a certain number of cards and they memorize everything. So as soon as they flip, these kids knew the formula, so they just typed really quick. So what Joseph was saying was that if they change the game into like Challenge 34, Challenge 45, where the kids has to constantly come up with a new formula, he thinks that's something that he'd be interested. But Joseph really hates memorizing. So he said, I don't like memorizing and I don't think this is something that interests him. So after hearing that, I agree with him. So I told Joseph, if you don't want to do Challenge 24, that's fine. But that was the first time we kind of recognized Joseph had a talent in math. When Joseph went to Longfellow Junior High School, he joined the math team. And he had to stay after school many times to compete against their students so they could represent their school. He wasn't too happy about staying after school, but he really seemed to enjoy the competition and being with his friends in math team. In 7th grade, he made it to the chapter math count competition, and he also got a perfect score on AMC 8. We really enjoy watching him competing in math count competition. When we went to chapter math count competition, we noticed that it was divided into team competition and individual competition. Now, team competition is something that we can't really watch. They kind of do it on their own. But the individual competition, at the end, they have finalists come up to the front and they sit in the chair, by two students, and they have buzzer. And as the question is on the, is flashed on the overhead projection, the narrator would start reading the question. But before you can even finish the first sentence, these kids are pushing their buzzers and giving out the answers. And it took about 2 or 3 minutes for the referees with the calculator to make sure the answer was correct. But I was really blown away. So I asked Joseph, how do you come up with an answer without actually reading the question? And he said he sees the numbers and symbols and the answer just kind of comes into his head without actually calculating or thinking. And I think this is how most of those kids are working because, I seen kids that were much better than Joseph. I was really surprised there were so many kids who are really good in math from Northern Virginia. So after the competition, just watching him, me and my wife, our hands are sweating and we were just kind of like clenching and just watching him competing and it was really, really fun. So after the competition, I asked Joseph, now is this something that you want to continue? He says, yeah, I like the competition and he likes to be with his friends. So he was happy with it and we were definitely happy with it too. In 8th grade, at state math counts competition, Joseph's team came in first and he came in fourth as individual, and I was really proud of him. And that year, their team made it to national math counts competition. And how this works is that they will pick 4 best kids out of every state, and every year they will compete in different locations. And that year, lucky for Joseph, it was held at Disney World in Florida. And all expenses were paid for the students, including 1 day at the park. So Joseph was really excited about the competition, but he was also very excited about having a whole day in the park just with his friends. And at the competition, I was really surprised to see how much the different states were investing in this competition. They were hiring private coaches, private teachers, and so on. So after the competition, one thing that I also noticed was that I wanted to encourage Joseph more in math, but he wasn't really putting in a lot of extra hours in math. Unlike most of his friends who are really into math were investing a lot of time in solving problems, looking for problems in the internet and in different books and different tutors and so on. But Joseph was not putting in a lot of extra time, but I didn't really want to push him in math because I didn't want him to get burned out. But we were definitely encouraged by his talent in math and we encouraged him. Joseph also told us he wanted to apply for TJ, which is Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology. And the reason being is that all of his friends were applying for it. So we told him that sounds great and we encouraged him. But honestly, I'm not a big TJ person. The reason being is that I believe kids at TJ are actually in disadvantage of getting into really top universities. Because all the universities are encouraged to pick diverse students from every part of the country, and also with the informative action, it could actually hurt your chances. But Joseph wanted it, so we encouraged him, and he actually got perfect score for the admission test, and he got accepted at TJ. At TJ, he also joined math team, obviously, and he was competing at a very high level. He was going to MIT, Harvard, Princeton, and I can't even name all of them, but he was constantly representing his school and he was one of the top students at the team. So one day my wife came to me and she said, I think we might think about different path for Joseph. And I asked her like what? And she said, maybe medical is not for him. Since he's so gifted in math, maybe we should kind of encourage him in science field that involves more of math than medicine. So I asked Joseph what he thought about it. Honestly, I wasn't too happy because, as I mentioned before, I really would prefer to have a certain goal so the kids will know which direction to go at the very early stage. That way it's easier for them at the end and make everything more possible. So when I asked Joseph, to my surprise, he said, he was actually kind of thinking the same thing. He said after he went to TJ and studying with other kids and having so many science classes being available for him, he's having second thoughts about medical school, and he really want to pursue like science in general. And he actually said, I'm actually thinking about MIT. So my wife was thinking the same. So I agree with him. So but I wasn't too happy because I had to come up with a whole new plan, roadmap to MIT, which I already had a roadmap made for medical school. So I had to kind of scratch that out and start making a roadmap for MIT. Now I found myself going against what I believed in. I mean, I've been advising people around me not to have their children go as a certain universities, but they have their goals set in their future lifestyle or their future occupation. But after doing some research, I realized MIT was the hardest university to get accepted, in my opinion, because they were focused on students' performance plus nothing. And also doing some research, I also realized that the MIT offers some of the best classes, but they were offering countless opportunities and resources for the students to expand their potential. So I thought it was a very good choice. Just like Rachel, we had to pre-plan everything for Joseph. Which classes he should take in high school, which classes he should get his recommendation letters from, and how to prepare for a good essay, and which standardized tests he should take and when, such as SAT, ACT, and AP tests, and also his volunteers and extracurricular activities as well. When we looked into all the science classes that were offered at TJ, we were very surprised and impressed. At TJ, Joseph took mostly AP classes and some post-AP classes. Now, taking so many challenging classes meant a lot of work, losing a lot of sleep, and also having conflict with him playing violin. The reason being is that if he wanted to take orchestra, he couldn't take certain classes, science classes that he wanted. So this is where I had to make a hard decision and advise him accordingly. So I told him about my story. I told him when I was in high school, including myself and most of my friends played musical instrument and also play sports. But none of them continued their instrument or sports after they went to college. Everything kind of stopped and I still don't play it. So I told Joseph, even though this was great activity for him and we all enjoyed it as a family, and through it he learned a lot as a team play and how to contribute to the team. But this is where he had to kind of make a sacrifice, where he had to stop the violin and pursue the science that he wanted. So after thinking about it, he agreed to it. Now this is where I really had to understand his capability and his limitation and his time schedule. Because if he takes too many challenging classes with certain activities that he can't really juggle both, it will affect his GPA. And once the GPA is affected, it's really difficult for him to bounce back next semester or next year, especially if he wanted to aim for top universities. When time came, Joseph applied for early action at MIT, but he had other 9 colleges ready to apply just in case. And when he was accepted, I asked him, do you want to apply for the rest of the colleges since you had everything ready, and see what other options that he had? And he told me that he was certain that he wanted to go to MIT and he didn't want to apply for any other colleges because it might actually hurt his friends who was applying for different universities. And I thought that was very noble of him. That year, Joseph was the only male Korean American who was accepted at MIT from Virginia. So I told Joseph it was like winning a lottery, except it wasn't by a chance. It took pre-planning, a lot of work, and a lot of sacrifices. I truly believe with the proper guidance, the kids could thrive in school and not get burned out and really stay focused in their school and future goal.